FromSoft games are infamous for their cryptic characters and opaque narratives. But sometimes, a literal talking head will show up and start telling you about the game's lore and themes. Other characters may have better arcs or more tragic stories, but I believe Aldia best embodies the philosophy and outlook of the Dark Souls trilogy. Before I delve into the lore, I want to commend the stellar quality of his speeches and his voice actor, David Gant. He gave a truly phenomenal performance that brought Aldia to life.
Life is brilliant. Beautiful. It enchants us to the point of obsession.
When I was going through my footage, I was shocked that Aldia only has about 6 minutes of recorded dialogue, and David Gant absolutely makes the most of those 6 minutes. Along with his brother Vendrick, Aldia helped found Dranlaic, but he later lost interest in the land's fortunes. Aldia didn't want to busy himself with the day-to-day affairs of running and defending a kingdom, and instead he chose more scholarly pursuits. So even though Aldia was the eldest boy, Vendrick became king. But with time, the two brothers ultimately grew estranged. According to the Aldia key, King Vendrick condemned his own elder brother to the mansion. They both sought the truth, but through different means, and their fervor meant the eventual withering of their familial ties. It's also worth mentioning that Aldia tells us,
Young Hollow, seek after Vendrick. He who almost became a true monk. The Vendrick is certain to guide your way.
There's quite a lot to read here. Even after all this time, Aldia can't resist taking a jab at his younger brother. So to me, there still seems to be some bad blood between the two men. By telling us to seek Vendrick, I believe Aldia wanted the bearer of the curse to see firsthand just what Halloween can do to a person. For me, it was absolutely gut-wrenching to see Vendrick helplessly pacing the room, quite literally stripped of all of his glory. In addition, before you can face Aldia in front of the Throne of Want, you have to defeat Vendrick. To be honest, I'm on the fence about Aldia's motives here. It could be his way of settling scores with his younger brother, or maybe defeating Vendrick is supposed to be a mercy killing, a small act of kindness from the otherwise ruthlessly pragmatic Aldia. As a side note, thanks to Nashandra and her sisters, so many of the best characters in DS2 are actually related to one another. So when Aldia mentions the 3 kings from the DLCs, they're technically his brothers-in-law.
Many monarchs have come and gone. One drowned in poison, another succumbed to flame. Still another slumbers in the realm of ice.
To me, it's absolutely goated that just one family includes Vendrick, Aldia, and the Burnt Ivory King. That kind of family dynamic reminded me a lot of Elden Ring, where the demigods are all related to each other, either by blood or by marriage. Or both. Elden Ring will never beat the Dark Souls 2 allegations. Confined to his manor, Aldia conducted ruthless experiments on all kinds of people and creatures. There, he attempted to uncover the secrets of life itself and viewed the undead as a key to this mystery. Judging by the sheer number of spells, armors, and weapons linked to Aldia, the man had a boundless curiosity. According to the spell Unleash Magic, the terrible deeds carried out in Aldia led to the unintentional birth of several shadowy things, all of them eerily malformed. The Sunset Staff further tells us that those invited to the manor disappeared, replaced over time with malformed beasts that roamed its halls. Then there's the Forbidden Sun, a pyromancy developed in Aldian rites. What could possibly justify such excessive destructive power? In all likelihood, the madmen of Aldia never even questioned the need. And yet, when you talk to Aldia, he never expresses any regret for any of his horrific experiments, or spares any thoughts for his many victims. They were simply a means to his end. Above all else, Aldia wanted to find an escape from the cycles of fire and dark, so it makes sense that he became obsessed with the time before disparity.
In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons.
To understand the dragons, Aldia basically did a Jurassic Park. He was able to replicate but not quite recreate them fully. His keep is filled with his experimenters, the Dragon Acolytes. According to their set, several of the greatest minds converged in Aldia to weave strange new rituals, but rumors suggest that during the course of their work, their thoughts were not their own. We also know that in DS1, the Dragon Apostle sought transcendence of life itself, a goal that surely would have appealed to Aldia. Aldia's keep also connects to the dragon Aerie, which, as its name suggests, houses scores of dragons, as well as the ancient dragon, which actually drops a giant soul. Then there's this fascinating line of flavor text from the item description for a seed of a tree of giants. When the giants fell, they grew into great trees. Death is not the end, for anything that has ever once lived remains a part of the great cycle of regeneration. But what of those outside the cycle? It's also heavily implied that Aldia created Shanalot, the Emerald Herald who guides the bearer of the curse. I'll also point out that the arch trees are actually stone, and since the flames of chaos can melt stone, Chaos Pyromancy will let Aldia study the arch trees more effectively. I think Aldia's appearance is most likely a result from his research into pyromancy. While we don't get direct confirmation, in typical FromSoft fashion, there are enough clues sprinkled throughout the first 2 Dark Souls games that shed light on how Aldia became the way he is. Let's start with the obvious. I don't think it's a coincidence that he somewhat resembles the Bed of Chaos. As we learn from its Lord Soul, the Witch of Izalith attempted to duplicate the first flame from a soul, but instead created a distorted being of chaos and fire. Its power formed a bed of life, which would become the source of all demons. The spell Chaos Storm further informs us that this ambitious attempt to copy the first flame created instead the Flame of Chaos, a twisted bed of life. It took me way too long to realize that Aldia is a literal burning bush, and that could be an allusion to how God appeared before Moses in the 3rd chapter of Exodus. Moreover, in DS1, we learn about Carmina, who pioneered new directions for the art of pyromancy. She harnessed the power of flame to actualize the inner self. So in a similar vein, Aldia may have explored new frontiers in pyromancy, and could explain how he was able to permanently change his shape. Then there's the immolation pyromancy in DS2. If a person is truly desirous of something, perhaps being set on fire does not seem so bad. In fact, Aldia being a master of pyromancies could even explain why he has so much riz. The spell, Undead Rapport, is a pyromancy you can use to charm enemies. The living are lured by flame, and this relationship is part and parcel to the art of pyromancy. Personally, I love the fact that there is actually an in-game lore reason for why Aldia is so beloved. I love that Aldia has a sense of humor. You can hear him chuckling to himself when he says these lines.
I believe in conscience. And yes, you have already joined the Crestfallen.
It's also my headcanon that Aldia is deliberately jump-scaring the bearer of the curse. As for why Aldia is so closely linked with bonfires, the Homeward Miracle could give us an answer. According to its description, the curse slowly erodes one's memory until even one's birthplace is reduced to a figment of a clouded past. But the bonfires are constant, a beacon for the tragically afflicted. So this could explain why Aldia was able to find refuge from the curse within the bonfire network. And thanks to Vengal, there is even precedent for someone losing their body but continuing to live on as a talking head. And you can even summon Vengal against Aldia. So when Aldia says,
One man lost his own body, but lingered on as a head.
He could be referring to either himself or the other guy who's just ahead. As a side note, the game gives us clues for Aldia's earlier days. In the foyer of the Aldia Manor, you can find multiple statues of this figure, and I'm assuming this is what Aldia looked like before his transformation. In addition, when the Scholar of the First Sin edition was announced, Aldia was part of the voiceover, but his voice didn't have any of the post-processing that we hear in the game.
Until the curse touches her flesh. We are bound by this yoke. As true as the dark that churns within men. What do you want, truly?
As a side note, I would love to know exactly how FromSoft was able to create Aldia's iconic voice. If there are any audio engineers listening, please sound off in the comments. By going beyond the weakness of his flesh, Aldia has attained a type of immortality. As the final boss of the Scholar of the First Sin, Aldia tests the bearer of the curse to see if they are truly worthy. Notably, after you fight him, he doesn't drop any souls or give you any type of reward. Aldia is deeply ambivalent about the nature of his world. Aldia rightfully condemns Gwyn for his actions.
Once, the Lord of Light banished the rock and all that stand from humanity. And men assumed a fleeting form. These are the roots of our world. Men are props in state of life, and no matter how tender, how exquisite, a lie will remain a lie. Young Harlow, knowing this, do you still desire peace?
And yet, if it weren't for Gwyn, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
All men trust fully the illusion of life. But is this so wrong? A construction of facade, and yet a world full of warmth and resplendence.
What I really appreciate about Aldia is that he isn't trying to convince the bearer of the curse of a certain perspective. He's just trying to get us to think for ourselves.
What do you want? Truly? Light, dark, or something else entirely?
I also like to read Aldia's speeches about the illusion of life on a meta level. He's addressing us not as the bearer of the curse, but as the player. We all know that the game is an illusion, and yet we continue to play it. So when Aldia asks us,
Young Harlow, are you intent on shattering the yoke? Spoiling this wonderful falsehood?
he's also asking us to reflect on why we play these games. What do we seek when we examine the lore? What are we hoping to find? And under this reading, the Age of Dark could be the screen when the game is turned off. I'd like to focus on how Aldia addresses us.
Young Harlow, young Harlow, young Harlow.
Hollow is translated from this kanji, which can mean both the dead as well as someone with an obsession or a blind lust. In Buddhism, these individuals are so obsessed with their fixation, they are left to wander and are unable to escape samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth. Many thanks to Last Protagonist for pointing that out. As for the English localization, I wasn't able to find any interviews for why they chose the word hollow. Nevertheless, hollow immediately made me think of the poem The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot, which fits right at home with the mood and outlook of Dark Souls.
We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw, alas. Our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless as wind in dry grass, or rat's feet over broken glass in our dry cellar. Shape without form, shade without color, paralyzed force, gesture without motion. Those who have crossed with direct eyes to death's other kingdom remember us, if at all, not as lost, violent souls, but only as the hollow men. This is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, not with a bang but a whimper.
Finally, I'd like to close this video with some meta-analysis with how Aldia fits into the other FromSoft games. As I mentioned before, Aldia is voiced by David Gant, but he also did the voice of Oswald of Kareem, the Pardoner in DS1.
It is only human to commit a sin.
In that game, the Portiners listened to the confessions of sinners, urging reflection and salvation. Their masks symbolize separation from worldly desires. Oswald can absolve your sins and sells karmic justice, a miracle of Velka. For each sin, there is a punishment, and it is the task of Goddess Velka to define the sin and met out the punishment. Oswald also sells the Book of the Guilty, or in the Japanese, the Record of the Sinners. According to its description, the Goddess of Sin, Velka, oversees this list of the guilty, who have disrespected the gods or their covenants, and shall one day face the wrath of the Blades of the Dark Moon. But by the time of DS2, Velka's name had been long forgotten, though she does reappear in DS3. So thankfully I don't really have to talk about Velka in this video. In addition, we find out in the Dark Souls design works that Oswald was initially supposed to be a former commander of Gwyn's Black Knights, and according to the Black Knight set, they were the knights who followed Lord Gwyn when he departed to link the fire, but they were burned to ashes in the newly kindled flame, wandering the world as disembodied spirits ever after. So it's quite possible that Portiner Oswald may have witnessed the first sin itself. We also know that long ago, the Black Knights faced the Chaos Demons and were charred black. So just to reiterate, Portiner Oswald is obsessed with sin and may have even fought Chaos Demons as a Black Knight. So there is clearly some type of thematic connection between Oswald and Aldia. And usually I would be fine with leaving it right there. But since in Dark Souls 2, the 4 old ones have the remnants of the souls of Seath, Gravelord Nito, and the Witch of Izalith, I wonder if Aldia is supposed to be a reincarnation of sorts for Oswald of Karim. Jumping ahead to Elden Ring, there is a fascinating parallel between Aldia and Mikola. I go into a lot more detail in this video, but in short, both individuals fought against causality. In Elden Ring, Mikola's Great Rune tells us that he tried to bury the original sin, but in the Japanese there is no mention of sin, original or otherwise. Instead, the game uses this kanji, inga, which was translated as causality in the Law of Causality. Inga appears in both Mikola's Great Rune and in Aldia's speech where he talks about,
I sought to shepherd you could fate, but failed.
Ultimately, Aldia accepts that he cannot triumph over causality, and that he needs to rely on someone like the bearer of the curse to truly break free of this cycle. But Mikola, on the other hand, does not come to this realization. Most recently, the Night Rain DLC gave us a new Nightfarer, the Scholar, who can wear the Portiner set. And if you go to the crypt, you can even contemplate the first sin, though this one was committed by the Cutting Gifted tribe. And like Aldia, the Scholar tried to fight against his fate, the disease that afflicts the Albinoryx, and he too comes to terms with the inevitable. As for Aldia and the role he might have played in Dark Souls 3, that is a story for another time. And that time is now. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know what yins think.